everybody. This is Paul Casey with the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame, our educational video series. Today, we are really honored to have a very special guest. He was inducted last year in 2019 in the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame, chosen by his peers. We are glad to welcome Grandmaster Ted Sumner. Ted, how you doing?
I am doing just peachy. How are you, Paul?
Good, sir. Very good to have you here. I'm going to put you on the center screen now, and we're going to pin you so you can talk to everybody. All right. So, Ted, you have a very exciting background. I mean, you had your experience is in the martial arts, your involvement in the police department, you're a writer, a competitor. You have done so many things, but we're just going to try to take on these parts of your life. And let's start out with your history, how you got involved with the martial arts.
I was a young kid. I learned very early that the world could be an unfriendly place, and that knowing how to defend yourself might be of some value. I started out boxing in the YMCA, did pretty well there. My instructor, Denny Johnson, thought I had some promise. He sent me to camp that Julie Menendez, who was the boxing coach at San Jose State. He was a two-time Olympic coach, coached Cassius Clay, later Muhammad Ali, and Joe Frazier to gold medals. And he had an NCAA championship team. It was grooming me for a scholarship to box for him when they dropped boxing after somebody got killed. And so I went ahead. I went on to San Jose State. While I was there, I was able to study judo under Yoshishida, who was the coach of the San Jose State judo team. And not only did I not have to pay, I got college credits. So I was able to train with those guys for a couple of years. But, and then I wrestled in high school. I got some experience, found out I didn't like rolling around on the ground with other guys. But it was my 8th grade school teacher when I went to visit him after wrestling my first year in high school. And he was a boxer also. We used to exchange a lot of information. And he said, "Now I got to show you this stuff I'm learning now. It's called Kenpo Karate." And we spent the next hour. And after that, I said, I gotta do this. So I.
What year was that? What year was that, sir?
That would have been late '63. And at that time, so I enlisted my buddy Rick Harper, who later went on to be a Disney prodigy. But we got our parents to let us take the lessons at the Tracy School. There were 2 schools in town at that time: Kangdukwan School under Bob Babbage, who was one of Norman Ross' top guys, and the Tracys, and that's where we wound up. And then it just went from there.
Wow. And so you're in 63, you're starting into the Tracy system. What was it like training with this? Did you work directly with Al or Jim or who was your first instructor?
My first instructor was Al. He taught us our introductory lessons. And then we became, my training partner and I became direct students of Jim Tracy, then all the way up to black. You know, and from time to time, they'd have other instructors and so forth. LaBounty was around at that time, Ralph Castellanos, Harry Hutchins, some pretty good martial artists that would occasionally fill in. And the group classes, you never knew who was going to teach.
Did you work out with those other gentlemen on a regular basis or just occasion?
Well, I mean, when they were there, yeah, you trained with them. I wanted to start going to sparring class when I was 14. There weren't any kids there. I was the kid.
Really?
14 years old. When I wanted to go to sparring class, Al told me, "Now it's a tough class. You're going to get the hell knocked out of you." And finally convinced him. And he said, "Well, you know, when you get the hell knocked out of you, don't come crying to me. You know, that's just the way it is here."
Mm-hmm.
So when my first class there, Greg Baines, I don't know if you recall his famous fight was Joe Lewis's first full contact kickboxing match, but Baines came in. He was from the San Francisco school. He came in with a cast on his leg, and at the end of sparring class, walked out carrying it. So that's
Wow.
The kind of class we had.
So when did you receive your black belt?
2 weeks before my 18th birthday. That's October 1968.
Wow. Do you remember who was there when you tested?
Like it was yesterday. Yeah. When I came in and Al told me they were going to test me. it was about 4 p.m, and then I was going to teach that night. They began the test. It was Al and Jim. By the time they finished, there must have been 150, 200 people there. All of them just watching me.
Wow. Did they take photos of your promotion?
No.
It was just a personal thing.
Yeah, it just, there were people there, but I mean, no, they didn't take any photos. I didn't have any photos until we started doing demonstrations at the university, and then some of the people took photographs there. But
I see.
we didn't even have mirrors in the school. I didn't know what I looked like when I moved.
Were you? I'm guessing some of that was pretty memorable. Those moments that you went out to demo and compete.
Well, the first demonstration I ever did was as a green belt. We'd all tested, and we were having a banquet. Ed Parker came up, taught the class that morning. I was from 9 to 10. And then he spent the rest of the day with my training partner and me. He taught each of us one side of the black belt set, the 2-man set. And then he taught each of us 3 demo techniques and taught us how to work the demo movements and that kind of thing. And then we did the demonstration that night at the banquet, including some breaking and other things. So that was my first demonstration, was under Ed Parker's tutelage.
How was that? How was it? Would you categorize Mr. Parker's relationship with the Tracys during the time you were there?
Well, and I've been there the last 57, 58 years. I mean,
but back in the early days,
back in those days, I mean, he was their instructor. They had a great deal of respect and admiration for him. Jim Tracy quoted Ed Parker all the time during instructional sessions. He had a great deal of respect for Ed Parker.
So you felt there was a mutual respect, obviously, and it was shared in the school.
Absolutely. I mean, we knew who Ed Parker was, our instructor's instructor. I mean, that was, we knew who he was.
So go on to, let's say, so now you get done and you're going up the ranks and whatnot. When did you start competing in tournaments?
My first tournament was the state championships in San Francisco, and that was 66, I believe. That was the one where Danny Sullivan got hit and then later died from a spleen rupture. But that was my first, and then I competed until I went into the Army.
I see. Did you find competitions? Did you really gravitate more toward the fighting aspect, or obviously in tournaments they also had form competition, but probably that wasn't something that did that appeal to you?
I never competed in forms. They used to have breaking back then, and I competed in fighting and breaking, and did pretty well in breaking. I mean, but I would go to 3 bricks if the other guy broke them, and then we had to go to 4. I said, no, you got it.
You got it. Okay. It's funny. You had a story you were sharing with me about one time you were doing a demonstration. Mr. Parker was watching it.
Well, that was the night I got my brown belt, and he demonstrated, and he sat down. We were going to break, and he was just sitting on a chair right next to it. He had his hands on his knees, or rather his elbows on his knees. And I looked at the boards. There were 3 boards, and he just nodded like, "Go ahead, hit it." And I lined up, and boom, I hit it. Well, for some reason, my focus was off. The center board split in 2, and a piece flew out right at his face. And he's sitting there not more than 3-4 feet from it, and he just comes up like this and knocks it out of the way. Doesn't change his expression. Doesn't move, and then looks at me, and then nods like, "Get going, get on with it, kid."
True Parker form.
He was pretty imperturbable. I don't think anything could appall him.
Tell us, you started to go to competitions. Were they just local competitions initially for you, or did you branch out to more statewide competitions?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, within the state, Las Vegas, Reno. I think I went as far as Albuquerque, and that's about all.
Was it a team competition, or just individually with you, or how did that work out?
Well, we went as a group. The Tracys always tried to provide us with the best training and the best instruction we could get. At that time, Joe Lewis was dominating the whole tournament scene, so they hired Joe to come in and train us. So he would show up like on a Tuesday, and we would train every day. And then on Saturday, we'd go to the competition, usually as a group. Now, the first team competition that I recall was when Tad Kubota held the World Team Championships in San Jose. And Chuck Norris brought a team, and we brought a team, all people all over the place. That was when there were 5-man teams. Our first guy, Jesse Moore, walked out, blasted the guy he was fighting, and Kubota said, "He's out." And they said, "Okay, you're disqualified." He said, "No, I don't even want him in the building. Get him out of the building." So we went on with 4 guys in that tournament.
Really?
So,
What's your takeaway from training with Joe Louis? Or was it just a one-time deal, or do it for several months, or was it years?
well, no, I mean, it was he was continually through whenever there was a competition going on or whatever he was had a seminar he wanted to do. So it was constant training. I got a chance to spar with him. That's intimidating. I mean, he's pretty darn good. But that was some great training. I mean, he had very, very good principles that he taught and good training methods.
His principles and his training methods, were those original thoughts, or was that things that he was sharing that he learned from other people?
Well, Joe was a consummate.
Did he give credit to others is what I'm asking.
No.
Okay.
No, Joe didn't give
that
credit
question.
to anybody, but it was very obvious some of the stuff he was doing, who he picked it up from.
And who would that be, sir?
Well, he picked up a lot of stuff from the Tracys. I mean, he got a lot of good things from Kenpo. He got things from Bruce Lee. He got things from Ed Parker. A smart martial artist is not above taking anybody else's best stuff if they offer it. And
sure,
he was a smart martial artist.
And I'm guessing you probably had some of that you've now incorporated into your own teaching and to help bring the best out of your students.
Absolutely. I mean, it'd be crazy not to. I mean, he had good, like I say, good training methods. Very, very hands-on and active. When let me put it this way: when I started going to sparring class, we'd line up. Whoever was running the class, we'd go through our warm-ups. Everybody'd sit down. 2 guys would get up. They'd go 2 minutes. They'd sit down. You were lucky. You got two matches, 3 if you were real lucky. That's 4 to 6 minutes of fighting. When Joe came, he said, "Okay, everybody pair up, 3 minutes. You'd fight for 3 minutes, change partners, 3 more minutes, change partners." After 30 minutes, you're going to get in shape or you're going to quit coming to class. I mean, and that's the way Joe did it. That's how he changed really the methodology and how we train for fighting and so forth.
When you were coming up, though, this is pre-protective gear, correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, everybody wore a cup. That was about it.
Okay, so it was pretty bare knuckles justice, so to speak.
That's the way it was.
So you had mentioned you got into tournaments. You went to obviously the CKC up in Northern California. Who did you meet there?
I met I met Bruce Lee there.
Oh, inquiring minds would love to hear this story. Please tell us.
Well, now remember, he wasn't the Green Hornet yet, and he hadn't been in a lot of movies, but he was. He had a very high profile based on the fact that he taught non-Chinese. But Al Tracy told me, he says, "There's Bruce Lee." And when he walked in, and a bunch of guys were crowding around him, and so I ran over. I was 15, and pushed my way into the crowd. And I'm standing in front of him as he's talking, and I just keep firing questions at him. And he's talking, he's demonstrating stuff. And finally, he grabs me. He says, "Would you shut up, kid? I'm talking." And those were his first and last words to me.
What did you learn from that?
Shut up when he's talking.
Thank you, Ted, for sharing that. It's interesting because we always have these preconceived notions of who these people are until we actually meet them. And the legend grows as time goes by, but we're finding out that most of them are human beings. Okay, so you're now getting into competition. You're going up the ranks. You're now a black belt, okay? What are you doing at this point in the Tracy system? Are you just going around teaching?
Well, I taught at the San Jose school. The San Jose school we had over 600 students at that time, which made us probably one of the largest schools in the world. You get, and I've been asked this question before, what about all these new things, the flavor of the day, the new fad, Krav Maga, whatever. Our system's been around over 1,000 years. It's passed down to us by the winners, the people who used it and survived. Ours is the best there is. And in almost 60 years in this, and everybody who I can see up on the screen there has been around. You've seen the fads come, they go, and it always comes back to the fundamentals of Kenpo that they go to with these new fads to try to base this on. And the thing is, they don't have the tradition. They don't have the traditions of training and excellence that been passed down to us. And they can't just create it. There's some smart guys, but it's just not enough time. Whereas we take a lot on faith, that this will work, and we train at it, and then in my case, it's always happened to work. So.
Well, there's a great example of it years after you've retired from the police department, and I'm looking at your book, and it's before the I think it's chapter 75, and you talk about what happened one night when you were doing the books, and you had a burglar come into the place.
Well, this was actually it was afternoon before I started the lessons in the early afternoon, and my office was in the back, and there was a little store next door, and this guy had just gotten out of prison. He was going home, and he asked where the phone was. He said the next door. Well, the guy passed the door to the phone booth, walked into my school. I was in the back. I heard the door open, and I thought it was the UPS driver. So I thought, well, I'll finish what I'm doing here, and then I'll go check. When I came out, he's walking out the door with two of my swords. One that was given to me by Sig Kufroth, Professor Sig Kufroth of Danzen Ryu Jiu-Jitsu. And I yelled. I just had a hip replacement several weeks before. And I yelled, and I started running it. Well, the guy starts to draw the sword. And I'm thinking, oh, if I don't get there before he gets that out of the sheath, I'm in real trouble. Or I can peel off and grab one of the other swords. Well, I gave it the best burst of speed I had and got there. Needless to say, the adrenaline was running. I beat him pretty good. He was a big guy, so it wasn't too bad. I didn't feel guilty about it.
Stop you at that. So you use the force necessary to defend yourself.
Yes, I did.
Nobody using a deadly weapon on you.
Correct. That was a razor.
Empty hand, right?
Most of those swords were razor sharp. I mean.
Okay, so we knew that you would have been cut up into pepperoni pieces real soon.
Well, and that was right in my own school.
Okay, so it's interesting. So I guess the lesson of it is that it doesn't matter where you feel comfortable. Danger is always there. One of the 8 considerations Mr. Parker talked about in his book, Infinite Insights, looking at your awareness, which was number 1, awareness of the circumstances. And obviously, with your experience as a police officer, you're used to identifying a problem immediately because of your training. So this is a great example where you're no longer a police officer and you're in your domicile, and this crazy person comes in.
Well, and when I worked night shift, like I used to say, if people knew what was going on in their own neighborhood after midnight, they'd never leave their home.
Sure, sure.
It's quite different after dark.
So I mean, obviously in your book, there's a lot of references in the opening, and I really encourage the people watching this, if you can, get a copy of Deep Cover Cop. Is this something they get directly from you, or is it they can get on Amazon, or how can they order a copy?
Yeah, they can get it from Amazon, or they can just email me, and I'll sign it for them. And
okay, and you're obviously listed on Facebook, so there's an easy contact there.
Yeah, and there's a Facebook page called Deep Cover.
Right. Okay. Because I mean, in the beginning, there's some amazing photographs from some of the arrests, some of the newspaper clippings that are showing here, and then then obviously some photos of you through the years with your family, beautiful family you're having here. So let's talk about things that are dear to your heart. and one of them is the veterans program that you were dealing with the VA. Why don't you explain that to the viewers here?
Well, the way that came about was my son, when he was working for San Jose Police Department, he wound up assigned to the crisis management unit. And that is a unit within the police department that helps police officers with their problems. When they have troubles, who do they go to? Well, they've got a unit that helps. And he started noticing that there were officers who had been in the military or who had taken military leave and gone to Iraq and Afghanistan. And they were having from mild to severe problems. And so he got with the VA. They directed him to an outfit called the Institute for Brain Injury, who dealt with these things. And they found that most of these people were suffering from mild to severe traumatic brain injury. And going further, they found out that if it wasn't the explosion that injured them, it was the fall afterwards. Well, I couldn't do anything about the explosion, but I could certainly help them with the fall. Falling is, I teach my students, chances are you're going to fall a lot more than you're ever going to have to fight. So you want falling skills. My own father fell when he was 80 years old, not a severe fall, but he didn't know how to control it. His head whipped and he broke his neck, lived the next 8 years of his life as a quadriplegic. And it was a simple fall. So I offered to teach a falling class. The VA, of course, took it to the extreme, said, why do we need you when we've got Tai Chi? I said, I was just going to teach them to fall. I don't know about Tai Chi, But they said, well, no, we want to do the whole program. So I explained to them how we teach. We teach body, mind, spirit. Oh, my God, no, spirit. They thought I was going to come in with a Bible and start preaching. And I explained to them what the warrior spirit consisted of. And everybody understands. I mean, you watch these coaches in college and pro football, they know how to get the guys stirred up, but they don't understand the warrior spirit to the extent that we do in the martial arts. We are the only physical discipline on earth that teaches people how to stoke it up, fire it up, and then how to control it and direct it. And then you got to know how to turn it off. And boy, that was tough as a police officer. Like I say, when that guy started to pull the sword, I got a little carried away and I revived him and beat him some more. But when you're a police officer, once this guy may be trying to kill you 1 minute, you got him under control and handcuffed. Now you're responsible for him. You got to protect him. If he got hurt, you got to take him to the hospital. If somebody else wants to abuse him, you got to protect him. So you have to learn that. Now, I explained that these guys were warriors. They were young men, and now they're in wheelchairs. They don't want a physical therapist. A cute little girl going to throw them the beach ball, and they're warriors. They want to work with stuff that would make them feel confident, make them feel as though they were worthwhile. So it took about 6 months. I had to make several presentations. We finally did a study group, started working with 4 guys in wheelchairs, and the results were just off the chart. Flexibility, strength, awareness, speed, and the one that we couldn't even measure was self-esteem. These guys started feeling like they were worthwhile again. Mm-hmm. So we kept the program going. I mean, I did it for about 4 years. When I moved to Austin, my top guy, Vance Markami, took it over and has been doing it for the past 5 years.
Congratulations. What
tremendous success with it. Doug Schwinn in Colorado instituted the program with the VA there and has had some very good results. So like I say, these guys, they don't want to sit in a wheelchair. They want to do something, but they don't want to throw a beach ball, and they don't want to play. They want to do martial arts. They want to do the stuff we do, and they love the hands-on. They love going hands-on.
So what you're doing is you're addressing their mindset.
Well, we're working the body, okay? We're working the mind. Now the brain's been injured.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say is that by reaching through, they're trying to get this brain to function, to control, to react, to tell the body to go forward.
And the more you use an injured muscle, the stronger it gets.
Sure.
And same thing with the mind. So,
it's funny is that Mr. Trejo, who's my teacher, developed a special program in Pasadena for children with special needs. And it was this very similar type of result. And in a little bit, I know that Zach Carter, who trains with me, was involved in that program. So he'll discuss it. And I'd love to hear what he has to say about what you're doing or what you've done and what was being done back in South Pasadena. So let's address a few other things. So what are you doing now in your non-police officer capacity, and you're wearing that awesome gi/uniform, with all due respect? What are you doing? Are you still working out? Are you still training people in Austin? What are you doing these days now?
well, I still have high-ranking students who come in from time to time to train with me. I attend, up until this pandemic started, I was probably somewhere around 10 to 12 events a year, where I teach, that kind of thing. I've also been working at 3 senior centers, teaching basically the same techniques we use with the brain injured vets. They're older, a lot of them are wheelchair bound, but we give them some skills that give them confidence. And I don't want anybody thinking that I mislead these people into thinking that they're going to be great martial artists. But the simple fact is, a lot of people live in fear, and just overcoming that fear and enabling them to live, whether they're ever assaulted or not, without that fear that they won't be able to take care of themselves. That gives people a lot of independence and a lot of well-being and peace of mind.
Sure.
Being afraid is a lousy way to live.
Sure. Let's do this at this point, Ted. Let's open up the microphones, and I'm going to ask several of our people that are viewing this right now. And so if you have your microphones ready, folks, be ready so that we can move quickly into asking some questions with Grandmaster Ted Sumner, one of our Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame members. He is part of 8 particular sister systems that are all here: American Tracy, Hawaiian Kaji Kenpo, Lima Lama, Shaolin Chinese, and Quan Fa. And I have to tell you, it is an absolute honor to have you here today to share these insights. So let's start off with somebody that you know well, Mr. Bob White. Bob, why don't you say hello to Grandmaster Sumner?
Hello, Ted Sumner. How are you?
I'm doing great, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good. Certainly enjoyed your interview. I do have a question. I know that you worked with Dick Willett up there, and now you're still really held in such high esteem by his black belts down in San Diego. What are some of the other great champions that were up there? I think Ray Klingenberg was up there, JT Will. I know you had some great guys, did he?
Well, of course, JT, Klingenberg, Paul Healy was an incredible fighter. We had Jim Trevino, Cliff Close, Paulo Olivas, Ralph Castellanos, Benny Castellanos.
Sure. Now, wasn't Jim Trevino one of John Sepulveda's first instructors?
Yes, yeah, he was.
Yeah. No, it's just a great lineage. A lot of people got their start up there in that school that are famous in the Ed Parker system, and just good quality Kenpo, good quality people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was wild. You had to kind of carry your own there. So, but it was a great place to learn.
Yeah, it's great how the sport polices itself.
Yeah,
and I know that's true on the map. That's great, Chad. Wonderful to see you.
Great seeing you, Bob. You look like you're very comfortable, and
They're
Look
waiting
at
for the
that.
popcorn to be delivered with the pizza. Thank you, Mr. White. Let's move over and Zach
Yeah,
Carter, welcome speaking to Grandmaster Ted Sumner.
How you doing, Mr. Sumner? Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Well, great listening to you. Reminded me a lot about what Frank Trejo was doing with mentally challenged kids. What we were doing is teaching them basic Kenpo. And a lot of times with the kids, they had brain injuries, so they couldn't go beyond their center line. Right. And so we did that, and what we found out is they were concentrating better, they were getting stronger, they were standing better. It's just one of the rules that we did with them was that they couldn't use this on anybody because, of course, every one of them wanted to be the Karate Kid. Right. But what was disappointing, though, was the PE instructor. He had these kids going in and out of through cones, and they're kids, even though some of them are 18, 20 years old. They were miserable. And then we would say, well, who wants to do karate? And they all stood up. And the PE instructor basically said, you're not going to get them to do anything. Well, guess what? We got them to do way more than anybody ever expected. Next thing you know, we had 50 students in the class.
Yeah.
And all just basic Kenpo. We weren't teaching them how to fight, but we're using it all as a form of therapy. And it's a wonderful thing. I wish more people would do it. And it was great hearing your story about that, sir.
Well, and it seems to be a self-motivating thing. Like you say, they want to do it. And when you're motivated, you're going to do more, you know?
Yeah, they loved it. And we made it fun for them. And you just get rewarded so much in seeing what they do and accomplish with that. And that is a spirit thing right there. That's warrior spirit. So yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Zach. We appreciate that. Let's go over to Vance. Vance, say hello to Ted. Can you unmute yourself, sir? Let's see if we can unmute him. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
hey.
we can.
Hey, Ted, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Hey, with the state of martial arts from back in the early days to where they are now, where do you kind of see the next generation should focus? We see a lot of difference between the millennials and things like that, but is training should change? How should we kind of address some of these things that are coming up nowadays?
Well, the one thing that's really important is that we not compromise on any of the standards and methods that we used. When I look back, I mean, you know, I was a halfway decent athlete. I was good in football. I was good in baseball. I was good in track and field. I gave all of that up for martial arts. And nowadays kids, well, you know, he's got baseball coming up, and then, you know, my daughter has tennis and then ballet. So then she won't be starting again until May. There has to be commitment. Commitment is what it's all about in life. If you're not committed to something, I would like to see it made. I would certainly like to see it made more mainstream, because I've always been of the opinion that Kenpo makes a bad man good and a good man better. And I know that, you know, the powers that be is, well, if we teach them about that, they'll use violence on each other. No, they don't. They tend to do that less. But again, the only thing we can do is police each other as teachers and school owners. And how do you do that? People have asked me, well, how do you do that? How do we hold each other to standards? Look, I look at the list of guys up here. I've known a lot of these guys for over 50 years. You know, the last thing I want is to run into somebody like Bob White at an event and have him look at one of my students and go, wow, you used to be a good teacher. Those guys suck. You know, what I want is I want them to look at my students and go, wow, you're keeping it up. You're teaching them well. You know, you can be proud of them. And that's the only way it can be done is us doing it with each other. We got too many, like you say, millennials coming up, and, well, you know, my daddy owned the school, and so therefore I'm the head of the school, and I'm the new supreme great grand master. Well, no, you're not. You're not even a good martial artist. So we've got to keep the standards where they were. Don't compromise. If you don't know how to set them, get with somebody who's been around for a while, set your standards, and don't deviate from it, don't compromise. I just don't want to see this great art. And like I said, every time we've had a new art pop up, it's always based on the principles from Kenpo, and then eventually it breaks down somewhere because it doesn't have our history, our great history. It doesn't have that 1,000 years of experience of the art being passed on by the guy who won. Well, how'd you win? Well, I don't remember. Let's see. And he goes through, passes that on. I don't care how smart the guy is. He can't figure this out. He can't figure out 1,000 years of combat success in one lifetime. So again, we take it on faith and we train the way we were taught, and you go from there. I don't want to see Kenpo relegated to a, oh, well, it used to be good. And it's incumbent upon us. We're the only ones who can do it.
Thank you, Vance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vance. Let's go on to Todd Durgan. Todd, say hello to Grandmaster Sumner.
Mr. Sumner, it's a pleasure to see you on here, sir.
Good seeing you again, buddy. How you been?
Very good. Hey, first I want to thank you again for coming out for the event and being gracious enough to watch my wife here test for her black belt. That
You
was
did a
awesome.
great job.
You there.
That was a really fun event.
Yeah. Hey, so I do have I'm curious because I got to meet Mr. Castellanos, Master Castellanos at the Hall of Fame in 2018 when he was inducted. Mm-hmm. What a gentleman, just a true gentleman. So I'm wondering, because I've heard a lot of stories from Dave Prosser, one of his students, do you have any good, maybe funny or fun stories, anecdotes with Mr. Castellanos?
Well, Ralph and his brother Benny used to get their lesson right before I'd get to the school. And when I came in, they were oftentimes going over stuff. And I was 14 when I started. Ralph had it was a Oldsmobile 442. And the seat was broken down. And when he was driving, he'd look out the back window because the seat was back so far. Well, he throws me $5 and says, go down and pick us up a bag of hamburgers. And I said, well, I don't have a driver's license. And Ralph says, neither do I. And I didn't ask him why then, but he later told me, he says, every time they give me a license, then they take it away. So I take off, I'm driving down the street, 14 years old, looking through the steering wheel. You could barely see my head. Go down and buy them a bag of hamburgers. But Ralph, when I started going to sparring class, when I started getting a little bit of size and some muscle, he pulled me aside and he said, you better understand you're never going to hit that kick off that rear leg because these guys are just as fast as you are. I said, okay, well then, this seems kind of pointless. He says, no. He says, they're as fast as you are, but you're quick. I said, okay, well, what are we doing here? Parsing words? What's the difference? He says, look, everybody can go 80 miles an hour. It's just you get there quicker. So I said, well, what should I be doing? He says, you should be moving in. He says, don't stand off and think you're going to beat this guy to the punch. You move in on him. You accelerate the fight. You make him fight at your speed. And then Joe Louis took that same principle and said, it's just like dancing. Everybody dances 1, 2, 3, but if you're going ba ba ba, you're throwing them off. So he was the first one to really give me some substantive information on how I should change my fighting style.
Nice. Thank you for
That's
sharing.
awesome. Sorry. That's awesome. Thank you very much, sir. It's a pleasure to see you on here. Appreciate your time.
Great seeing you.
Let's go to the colorful Joe Rebello. Joseph, how are you? Take your mute off and say hello to Grandmaster Sumner.
You bet. In case you don't know, I'm at the beach, but it was worth it being here for the meeting, and had a lot of great experiences meeting Mr. Sumner through Mr. Tracy and the Gathering of Eagles. Had a great experience with him about, we talk about weapons defense techniques. And if you really want to have a great seminar, take a seminar on weapons defense techniques with Ted Sumner. He did a great one in Texas at the Keepers of the Flame event. and it was really well done. I've got a copy of his book autographed. It's a great book. I also wanted to ask about somebody else because you're bringing up all these great stories about people that I've heard of, but I really haven't heard a lot about. And one of them was Harry Hutchins.
Yeah.
And there's one gentleman out in New York who was one of his students. And for a while, I think he was actually teaching out that way. But if you can give us something about him, because he's not a person we hear a lot about in the Tracy or the Kenpo lineage.
Thank you, Joseph.
Well, Harry was one of their first students when they moved up to San Francisco. A lot of people don't understand how that all came about. They were studying with Ed Parker in Pasadena. They decided they were going to go to law school. They were in the debate team at Pasadena at JC, and they did well. So they thought, well, natural progression is a career in law. So they moved up to San Francisco, got enrolled in Hastings Law School, opened a karate school to finance their education. And Harry was one of their first students. Harry was not a tall guy. If you looked at him, you might think he's kind of roly-poly. Wore thick glasses. He took his glasses off, took his shirt off. That guy had a 54-inch chest and was solid muscle. I mean, he was one of the toughest guys that they had there in those early days. And Harry took over the school in San Francisco when they moved down to San Jose. He was the one who trained Michael Chong, Death Machines. You ever get a chance to go on YouTube and watch Death Machines with Ron Marchini and Michael Chong, Steve LaBounty and Ralph Castellanos have a cameo in that where they attack Marchini in a bar. But it's arguably one of the worst movies ever made. But we're seeing it to see all your buddies.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, let's move over to Grandmaster Chuck Sullivan. Are you there, Chuck?
I am here.
Say hello to Ted Sumner.
Hey, Ted.
I am honored, sir.
I read your book. Beautiful. I don't know how you did it. I'm so, I was trying to put myself in the position that you were in, and I said to myself, as soon as the guy looks at me, he's going to say, he knows. I'm a fake. I'm telling you, I was so impressed. Really, I enjoyed the book immensely, my friend, immensely.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this: you're how old now?
70.
70. When's the last time you freestyled?
Oh, what are you talking about? Working with a student, or are you talking about fighting somebody?
Oh, I mean, just getting out there with somebody and thumping.
I mean, because I work with my students, but the last time I fought somebody who could really bring the gas, I was probably somewhere around 50.
I was just wondering, because to me, if you don't freestyle, hang it up.
Yeah.
Hang it up, because you're kidding yourself. But the dojo is the dojo, and the street is the street, and freestyle fighting is what bridges the gap.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very important component of the training.
Yeah, yeah. And there are schools, of course, and we both know, they don't freestyle at all.
No, I know that.
They just, it's out of the curriculum. And they're just kidding themselves and their students. As far as I'm concerned, it's a, forget about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Chuck. Let's move on and go to somebody else. Doug Schwinn. Take off, unmute your microphone and say hello to Grandmaster Ted Sumner. Are you there, sir? Can you unmute your mic? No. We'll move right along. Hey, Matthew, can you unmute your mic?
I can.
Good. Say hello to Grandmaster Ted Sumner. We'll come back to Doug in a minute.
Hey, Ted. Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Hailing from. Go ahead.
No, I just said nice meeting you.
Well, thanks. Hey, I'm hailing from Spokane, Washington, and my wife is teasing me as I hold my breath before Paul calls on me to see if I have a question or not. And this time I do. So I missed a little bit of the first part of of the meeting today. But as you look back on your career as being an instructor and a teacher, what was your, not necessarily your greatest accomplishment, but maybe favorite accomplishment with your students?
Thank you, Matthew.
Well, I would say that the only thing I've ever really done that is really greatly worthwhile in my entire life was being a martial arts instructor. I have worked, nobody ever came to me that I put in prison and said, thanks, Ted, for arresting me. That 10 years that I did at San Quentin really helped me. It changed my life now. And I've been in business. I've never had anybody say, oh, well, that software changed my life. And yet now with the internet, I don't go a month that I don't hear from somebody that I taught at one time or another who doesn't say, you know what, studying from you, that changed my life. That turned me around. That's what enabled me, gave me the courage and the ability to do what I did, or what I've done, and get where I am. And that happens all the time now, like I say, with the internet. Not with anything else I've ever done. No old girlfriends ever say, dating you was really great now.
How about ex-wives?
No.
Thank you, Matthew. We appreciate that. Let's move on over to Derek Hibben, part of the Hibben family with his brother Wes, and obviously Gil is here. But Derek, say hello to Grandmaster Ted Sumner.
Hello, Mr. Sumner.
How are you, Derek?
I'm doing better than I was, sir. Thank you for asking.
That's good.
Just on the mend from just some stupidity. I really enjoyed hearing you talk. I'd really like to check out your book. It sounds like you've got a lot of insight and especially firsthand experience. We've got a lot of guys that they can talk the talk, but they don't walk it. So heard lots of good things about you and hope to one day meet you and be on the mat with you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. I really appreciate it, and I hope you get better soon. Derek's one of the most talented young men that you put a camera in his hand, he creates magic. And we were very grateful the first year of the Hall of Fame that he was there to capture perfect moments of Kenpo karate history. Thank you, Derek. Give my very best to your brother and to your father. Moving on, Chuck. Hello, Chuck. Can you unmute? You can't. You can only hear us, right? No, there we are. Hello, Chuck. Can you talk to us? For some reason, I can't. We're not getting Chuck to come in. Well, we'll move on the other end of that. How about Wes Hibben? Wes, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Hey, Wes, say hello to Grandmaster Ted Sumner in Austin, Texas.
Hello, Mr. Sumner. It was a pleasure listening to your story tonight. And I will have to say thank you for your service in both the military and the police force. It's appreciated.
My pleasure.
Wes works with his father and helping out on the Hibben legacy with the famous knives.
Yes.
We're all so familiar with. What are you smiling for? We know it's true. Wes is a really good guy.
Yeah.
He's got a fantastic family.
Well, Mills Crenshaw talked about his father a lot.
Yeah, I was talking to Dad about Grimshaw today, so yeah, we've been trying to go over some of his history so he can do this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Wes.
I don't have any questions for you tonight, but I just wanted to say thanks.
No problem. We appreciate that. Let's move over to somebody else now. Libby Hines, are you there? And can you say hello to Mr. Sumner? Are you there? Libby?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you. Say hello to Grandmaster Sumner.
Mr. Sumner, this is AC Rainey. How you doing, man? Good to see you.
How are you?
Wonderful seeing you. I'm going to echo somebody else's sentiment. I owe you a whole lot, man. Thank you for coming up here and helping us out with the event and being so much a part of it and the whole 9 yards. My hat's off to you because you just, what you guys don't know is he volunteered right off out of his own good gracious, and he came up here on his own without anybody else, without solicitation or a whole 9 yards. And I will forever be grateful to that. He wanted to help person as far as the class is concerned. My book, I love the books and the whole 9 yards. I do have some stories I would like to share with them after hours. That's it. I know he can relate to a lot of the stories in the whole 9 yards, just like a couple other people like Mr. Poston at that point. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. And thank you for all that you mean to all the martial artists all around the world.
Well, thank you, sir.
No, thank you.
Thank you, AC. Looking forward to seeing you. AC's one of my favorite people at the Hall of Fame. He always comes up to the podium and things to talk about. And
Well,
I have to twist his arm to stop him, but
oh, that's not true.
we love you, AC. Have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
You know what I'm saying.
We've got 3. Don't worry. No, I got him excited there, Bob. He never gets that excited unless he's asked to talk. Okay, so let's move on. You're gonna have to mute up there for me, sir. Okay, so let's go on. We have 3 more people, and then we have somebody special as well. Gene, are you here? Can you hear us, sir? Gene? Can you unmute your microphone and say hello to Grandmaster Sumner? We got an issue? Okay, we'll move right along. Steve Orsino. Steve Orsino, are you there? Yeah. Mr. Orsino, can you say something to Mr. Ted Sumner? Thank you.
Mr. Sumner, thank you for your time.
Oh, yes.
Talking to us, but I do have some questions. You mentioned Sid Kufarath.
Yes.
So that implies to me you probably did some cross training with the Danzanru people.
I spent 10 years with Professor Kufroth.
Okay, so when you said you taught the rolls and falls and whatnot, did you teach the Danzanru Koninkan version of rolls and falls or the Kodokan, the judo version?
No. Well, a lot of the techniques in Kenpo are very similar to those in Danzanru. Right. I did learn his Danzanru system, and what I'd gone to him for was I wanted the Jiu-Jitsu healing arts, and that easily translated into clarifying targets that we use in Kenpo, particularly the nerve striking and nerve manipulation, which in police work, that sure makes things a lot easier. You can move a big person around real easily with nerve manipulation. So
the Sifuku Jitsu training is well worth the time.
It very much so, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And like I say, I sought him out. We became friends, and I took all the training in the Sifuku Jitsu, the certification through Tony Janovich, and then spent the time training with Professor Kufroth.
Yeah, he's real easy person to talk to, and he had even stories with him and Chow too, so that was pretty interesting. So.
Yeah, he was there right in the middle when everything was happening in Hawaii. Yeah. So I mean, he didn't offer a lot. You had to ask him questions, but he always had the answers.
Right. Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Steve. It's good to see you. I appreciate you being there. Let's go to Brian Strain. Brian, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you say hello to Grandmaster Ted Sumner?
Master Sumner, thank you for filling in some history for me.
Oh, good. I'm glad it could help.
Yes, sir. And some interesting feedback, and we have things in common, especially with special needs athletes. I started a class in North Idaho for special needs athletes. Very interesting. It's still running after 30 years, actually.
Wow.
Congratulations, Brian.
That's some longevity. That's really good.
Thank you.
It's more rewarding for me than anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Sumner.
No, I understand. I know it's rewarding, but it's also very, very demanding. So 30 years, that's incredible.
Thank you, Brian. We appreciate you coming on, and we wish you continued success in your projects, and especially in your training. So let's move on. Finally, let us talk to Senior Master of the Arts, Dennis the Golden Dragon Knatzer. Please say hello to Grandmaster Ted Sumner.
Hello, Mr. Sumner. How you doing, sir?
This is an honor. How are you?
Yeah, a long time we haven't talked in a while.
No, I know.
I was
Go
gonna
for
say,
it, Dennis.
going back to Harry Hutchins, he was Tracy's first black belt, as I recall.
Yes.
And then it was followed by Steve Fox and then Steve LeBounty.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's some old time history there.
And then their fourth black belt was my 8th grade school teacher, Dave Cardenas.
Oh, is that, yeah. Well, I stopped at 3, so I didn't know him. But yeah, what are you doing today with Kenpo, specifically?
Well, like I say, I attend a number of events that are held. Tracy's, even though Al's passed, we still do our super camp every other year, our gathering of Eagles on the off years. Now that I'm here in pretty much the middle of the country, I attend a number of events, Dallas, St. Louis, Tulsa. I go to Roger Green's event every year, even though Roger has passed. I was on his senior advisory council, so I try to get up there once a month and teach his students. They continue to train at his ranch. And then there's always something going on. In addition to which, I have my senior black belts come in for training from time to time, and I do work with the senior centers here a little bit.
Are you developing anything?
Not like I was when I was teaching. You know, when your head is in it 5, 6, 7 hours a day, you're constantly revealing new things. When you slow down, the revelations slow down along with it. So not so much as I was.
Well, that's great. Well, it's good to see you. You look well, and so good on you. And try to bring some peace to the things that are happening today in Seattle, and particularly with the Peace Force. There's some crazy suggestions out there of defunding the police, and boy, it scares me.
Yeah, I don't think that'll work out real well.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I want to make Bob White chief of police.
Yeah, me too. That'd be great. Get this thing straightened out once and for all.
Well, it's good to see you that you're looking well and you're doing well, and it's great. It's great to hear from you. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you, sir. You.
Take care, Ted.
Mr.
Good to see you,
Sumner.
man.
Thank you, Ted.
Appreciate you on here, sir.